Okay, so this is first prize. This is our mirror ball. And we have 5 teams competing for it. I'm going to put this on the judge's table here so everybody can look at it. We can turn the lights off and maybe everybody can put their flashlight on here. All right, so don't let that dazzle you or blind you. So my instructions to the judges are, be fair, be impartial, listen to what the people have to say, and they're going to go quick, so you have to catch on. There will be a time for questions, okay? I will allow that. And so think about that, put that on your judging sheet if you like. And if you have some thoughts for the presenters, put those on the sheet. I will give these sheets to the presenters to help them be more successful in what they're doing. Fair enough? Okay, you guys all? I'm not going to do an oath or anything like that. So, yeah, you're going to meet them soon. Yeah, I know. I told you ahead of time you can prejudge. You want to do that. Okay, so we have 5 presenters. This is the Toro tank. Anybody know why we call it the Toro tank? What does that mean? It's here. That's right. Toro is our sports emblem and our school emblem. And so we call it, instead of Shark Tank, Toro Tank. We've run these for now about 3 or 4 or 5 years and had a lot of fun with it. And so hopefully you guys do as well. I was going to use, you want to sign me out? You got something coming up? Okay. I was going to have you guys all vote on Slido, where you would vote, but I think we're pushing the envelope on some of the electronics with Zoom and some of the other things we've been doing here today. So I think we'll just jump right into the Toro tank, and I'm going to bounce it around. We have 2 companies that are young startup companies. We have a school, and we have 2 cities that will be competing with their projects. And so I'm going to kind of bounce it around and keep it a little random. And so I'm actually going to, because we are at Cal State Dominguez, I'm going to have the Cal State Dominguez team go last. Okay? What I will say, I'm going to ask City Envoy. Where's Envoy? You guys in the room? Where?
Yeah, I see it in the minutes.
Okay. You're not going to you guys will go 3rd, and then City Cuddy, you go 4th. Okay? Cal State Dominguez. So we set to go. This thing's empty still? Okay, so then we're just going to skip through Craig right now. And what's the next one? You got that? Okay, you guys ready? Envoy, come on up.
Who's going first?
You're going first.
Okay.
As an entrepreneur, one of the characteristics of good entrepreneurship is what? Be ready. Be flexible. Be prepared for the unexpected. I thought I was going last. No, I'm going first. Okay. So the criteria will be, we have 5. I'm going to give them about 11 minutes. So if they start to drag a little bit, we'll move that along, but I want to have them leave time for Q&A. And Q&A can come primarily from the judges because they're doing the judging sheet. But if people in the audience have a question, you raise your hand, we'll make it. And we'll go from there. So judges, you have not seen these before. You're totally objective here, right? This is brand new to you. Okay, judge them fairly and have fun. Okay, all right guys, stage is yours. Reed, you keeping the time? Okay.
What's the time?
You have 10 minutes.
Okay. Well, hi, my name is Michael Lawrence, and I'm joined by the co-founder of my company, our company called Envoy. Envoy, in short, is an EV car sharing company, and I'm just going to run through a few quick slides that sort of follow the format of the judging criteria and discuss what we're all about. Envoy seeks to address some of these particular issues cities are changing right now. Cities are looking at the fact that there's crowding and traffic. There's a lot of carbon emissions. People are thinking of ways to clean the city, and of course, for our purposes today, energy efficiency is at the forefront of all of our thought processes. The biggest issue right now is that while a lot of these the energy efficiencies and the new technology and the green technology is being offered to those that can readily afford it, many underserved communities aren't being provided with the sort of energy efficiency and clean tech that they need to also participate in the changing economy and the way that cities are changing their perspective of transportation and mobility. So enter Envoy, and what Envoy does is we primarily partner with developers and private property owners, both residential, office buildings, so commercial, hotels, and what we do is we offer designated on-demand EV car share. You see some of our cars over here. We have Fiats and e-Golfs, and what we do is we set up EV charging stations and provide designated cars for multi-unit building developments. The entire Envoy platform resides on the Envoy app, which is a very sleek app that allows for a reservation process. You can see what cars are available, and we're particularly focused on deploying both our infrastructure and our technology to underserved communities. So what this allows us to do from the perspective of energy efficiency is it allows us to reduce the number of cars that need to be parked in any particular development, whether commercial or residential. So, if we're targeting, a single car family that might need to get a second car, well, instead of these 20 families having to buy a second car, they can just share one of ours. So that's kind of the idea. It's a way of reducing the energy that's consumed by any particular building development. And here you see kind of some of the incentives for adoption by the different segments that we're kind of targeting and working with. From the perspective of the tenants, they're convenient and they're there. They're right in front of tenants' buildings. Tenants we're finding that having cars parked in front of their building that they can share sort of prompts a cultural shift amongst the tenants so that they feel as if they have these cars that are readily available, and as we'll discuss later, these cars can not only be used for convenience, for running errands and for getting to work, but also can be used within the gig economy itself. We'll talk more about that in a moment. From the perspective of real estate developers, we allow developers to reduce the number of parking spots that they have. There are less cars. We promote sustainability, which has become sort of a buzzword from the perspective of developers and permitting. And it's a new type of amenity, which is really cool. I mean, people now are looking for, does this building have a swimming pool? Does this building have a gym? And does this building have some EV cars that are available for us to use whenever we want? And I know that we have a lot of cities here. So from the perspective of the city that we're often in dialogue with, Envoy reduces car ownership and parking in the public right away. All electric, so it reduces emissions and pollution. We also support, because we're deploying charging stations as well as cars, we support expanded EV infrastructure, which I know every city is looking to do right now. Commuter programs, so basically allowing employers to reduce their commuter taxes, and so multiple commuters can share a car when we have them in commercial properties. And again, as I said, less use of public right of way for parking. A few people are sharing a car now instead of having multiple cars out. Okay, I'll let Eric go on and talk a little bit about funding.
Thank you, Michael. That was actually incredible. Michael's actually been with us for 2 weeks now. Obviously, he comes from a great background from Blue LA and Cycle Hop before, but he really already knows his stuff with this. So just want to kind of talk about where we are and what we're doing. We're currently in Los Angeles. We're in about 50 locations. We have about 20 cars deployed. We just launched January of 2017, so we're only in this under 400 days. And we launched our first vehicles in April 2017. But since then, we were just awarded a grant from the California Energy Commission, $1.5 million. That's going to allow us to deploy into Sacramento and the Bay Area. What we did with that grant is we teamed up with low-income disadvantaged community owners to actually provide these vehicles for those tenants. And what we've done is we're actually deploying in 15 sites in Sacramento and 15 sites in the Bay Area, dual charger at each site. One vehicle will be an on-demand electric vehicle for people to use for personal use, rented by the minute, up to 3 hours. The second vehicle is actually going to be used for people that want to drive for the gig economy, so they can actually rent this vehicle and go drive for Uber, Lyft, Postmates, whatever they want to, which we really think is important. And the nice thing about that is we're actually working now also with the Rocky Institute on another program that we should be able to announce soon. But they've run some great analysis on kind of the job creation and the economic benefits for deploying these types of services. And they figure that each one of these vehicles that we can deploy in these communities can actually create up to 2 full-time jobs or 10 part-time jobs, which we think is really important. And beyond that, it will raise people or the minimum wage from around wherever it is in the community, up to about $60 to $17 an hour. So these individuals are now getting these vehicles that they don't have to pay for charging. They don't have to pay for fuel. They don't have to pay for insurance because insurance is included, maintenance is included. So there is really no kind of loss for that. Some of the other things we wanted to talk about is, we are in California. We're very lucky to be in California. 2018 will be the year of the electric car, and it's going to be because of ZEV programs that California has implemented, and they keep pushing in regards to rebates and incentives, and that's really important. What we've done is we've actually teamed up with 3 of the EV charging companies that have received Electrify America grants, and we're helping them find sites in multi-unit developments and as well as workplace. I think there's going to be like 900 sites or 900 chargers just in California, but there's other incentives and rebates. And we're kind of here today to talk to U.S. cities. We're looking to team up with cities on coming up with the right type of policies that take mobility into consideration when we talk about new developments. Whether you believe self-driving vehicles are 10, 15 years away, the buildings we build today are going to be here for 40, 50 years. And there needs to be some thought leadership and some ideas of what we should do with these developments. Again, operational revenue, we get investments from these developers. We're already working on a couple projects in Culver City to help developers reduce parking requirements, to provide on-demand electric vehicles on site. One thing we didn't touch on is we are actually integrating e-bikes and e-scooters into the platform. So you can imagine 3 parking spots at an apartment building, 2 with electric vehicles, and 1 with a row of e-bikes and e-scooters, all accessible through a mobile app. And then ongoing operations are funded by usage of these vehicles, and we believe as time goes on, we'll see more and more adoption. And I guess there's very little time to go to the gig economy. We talked briefly about the benefits of what these vehicles can do for people now in disadvantaged communities. Obviously, access to technology that they normally wouldn't have is very important. But also, when we talk about air quality, usually disadvantaged communities are driving older cars that pollute more. So being able to provide them with electric vehicles is, I think, we believe is a great benefit to sustainability, but also gives them access beyond the public transit lines and gives them access to the ability to actually go make money with these vehicles, which we're extremely excited to do. Thank you.
In fairness, the 10 minutes was supposed to include Q&A. Okay, right, I told you guys that. So I'm going to extend it 2 more minutes, and I'm going to give that to all the other competitors as well.
That's
if they need it. Okay, but you guys have 2 minutes for Q&A from the judges first, and then from the audience.
Who will be paying for the electricity and for the gig economy, working like for Lyft or something like that? Would you be taking a cut of that, whatever they're making?
Yeah, so the way that it works for the gig economy is they would be paying a hourly rate to use the vehicle. We're looking to charge around $5, $4 to $5 per hour. And then what was the first question was who pays for the electric use? Typically the properties are actually picking up that bill for most of the properties that we're deploying, especially with the CEC grant. But we also have the ability to pick those up, and we're actually teaming up with local utility companies to provide DC fast charging. So, after these batteries will deplete after like an hour and a half usage, so they'll have access to free charging while they're using this in the gig economy through some free public charging.
Michael, I heard you say the word amenity, and from my experience in apartment hunting, the word amenity means higher rent. So how do we help residents already burdened with higher rent costs in Los Angeles County from, how do we get owners not to charge more for an amenity?
So in regards to amenity, we actually think this is going to be a standard one day. About 8 years ago, hotels used to advertise that they have an elevator as an amenity. So there are going to be standard things that will become part of our life as standard. And mobility is going to be one of those. We're going to be included within our housing, within our workplaces where we're staying. So amenity is, it's a key word that we use now, and when it comes to socioeconomics, we have everything from affordable housing to luxury housing. So the key word for the luxury housing is obviously amenity, but again, this is to provide efficient and economical mobility to people that don't really have it.
Do you have a timeline on how it can be standard?
We can talk about the future of mobility, and I can talk to you about hours about that, but in regards to this coming mobility revolution, I think we're going to be there in under 10 years.
I would just add that when we're talking about underserved communities, it's our position that underserved communities should have this amenity without it being a financial burden to them, and that's a lot of what we're working with cities to structure. So that's something that we want to pass along to everyone very much equally, without it having a financial burden on tenants, for example. That's what we want to do.
All right, nice job, guys. Give them a hand. Set up. Okay, judges, you want to take a minute, finish up your score sheets, and read. Let me get the presentation up. Thank you for those positions. They may not have some non-categories. Okay. Just leave it like that. So the competitors all received judging criteria before today. So they knew what they were going to be judged on. So that's only fair. Any questions from the audience? Anybody? What do you guys think? Fun? Keep it going. I know we are. We're ready to roll. Next one. I got to let the judges catch up. Yeah, please. So what happens in entrepreneurship? Technical things happen. And it has nothing to do with the product or service, it just has to do with making sure that so we'll get started with the city of Cudahy.
I gotta appreciate you.
Okay.
The secret to being a good entrepreneur.
What do you got?
50 different stupid cables.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm sorry.
Well, Craig, if you're ready, go. I want to get this thing done. That mirror ball is shining in everybody's face. How you doing, guys? You all set? Okay. Make sure you have the company name on there, all the stuff. If you're all done, I'll take your registration. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and we totally these in real time as we go forward. So, my assistant Reed Gill is an MBA student from India, and he knows how to calculate and add very fast. So he's going to be doing it. And he's all set? Okay, for basics. All right, next up is a company called Smart Csm, and I'll let Craig talk for himself. But Craig, his company came through our incubator and started here, and he will tell you what he's doing. Clock starts now.
Sorry to torture you. Thank you for your patience. You've been very kind. Nobody threw any fruit at me or cookies. And thank you, Mike, for a great event. My name is Craig Carroll. I'm the CEO of Smart CSM. CSM stands for Critical Systems Management. Ultimately, what we do is help large commercial properties like Cal State Dominguez Hills, one of our clients, manage their infrastructure. Infrastructure is very much like the human body. The human body is blood, central nervous system, and air. Big building like this works the same way. HVAC is the lungs, electricity is the central nervous system, and plumbing is the blood. So we basically help people like the facility team at Cal State Dominguez Hills save time, money, and lives by organizing their infrastructure. Key infrastructure challenges that facility managers are facing. Limited by the information they can find because they can only see so much. No easy access to documentation. That may not make sense to you, but when the emergency happens at 3 in the morning on a July 4th weekend, when it inevitably does, it can take hours to get the critical data to the people in the field. Knowledge transfer, a gigantic issue. When a guy named like Kenny Seaton, who's been here for years, who knows everything about this place, drops dead, I hope that doesn't happen, or retires, that knowledge leaves with him. Smart CSM makes buildings smarter. So here's the problem. This, believe it or not, is one of the top defense companies in America. That's what their plan looks like. This is how they track their mechanicals, and this is a panel schedule from a high voltage panel. This is a 40 volt panel. You make the wrong mistake in front of that panel, you're gonna die. That's true everywhere. When I went to Cedar Sinai last week to meet with them, the first thing they said is, how do you get a picture of our panel room? That's what the infrastructure of America looks like, and many cities look the same way. We created Smart CSM. Smart CSM is a very simple drag and drop system that can be used on any device. Every icon represents a critical part of the electrical infrastructure. Within each icon, you can locate all the key data, the blueprints, the as-built, the warranty information. For a generator, the cycle by which to restart it in an emergency. So a simple technician with a high school education can come in with his iPad, pull up a floor plan for this floor, click on an icon, and understand exactly the infrastructure of this building with no knowledge before they touch the place. Ultimately, what we do is we create a digital version of your panel. Now, when I get the emergency call, and I'm Kenny, and it's 3 in the morning, I can click on that room right there. It will tell me exactly what circuit to inform the people in the field to reset. That means hours, time, cost, and most importantly, lives saved. We launched this about 9 months ago. In the last 9 months, we've closed 22 of the largest corporations in Southern California. This is the one I'm most proud of. We recently closed a deal with the city of Manhattan Beach, which will be our first city. It's all about ROI, obviously. You're always making a decision as a facility manager. Is it more important to replace an air handling unit that has an immediate ROI, or to invest in a software like this? I will give you some very key metrics to look at. With the Salvation Army, they realized a 15% reduction in labor and a 22% reduction in the cost of electricity in their charge. They were spending $250, they were able to reduce that to about $205. With Raytheon, they were able to avoid catastrophic shutdowns. What's a catastrophic shutdown? A catastrophic shutdown is when you shut down an electrical panel that controls an innocuous part of the building, like a bathroom. But what you don't realize is you just shut off your POS system, Or at Raytheon, you just shut down a black ops room that's been doing a flight simulator test for 10 months. So avoiding catastrophic failures is critical. In the medical world, a highly regulated world, it's all about avoiding OSHA fines. So how do you use this on a daily basis? Okay, something goes wrong in the system. You go into a light pole and the light's out. So right now, the way facilities works is they get a cherry picker, they go all the way up to the light, they take it apart. It takes about 2 hours. They go down, they order the parts. So you just wasted about a third of a day. With our system, the technician can either from the desk that he's sitting at, or he can go out into the field, use his smartphone, read the QR code, and find out everything about that device, thereby going up to that device one time. Imagine the thousands of things in a city that could help. Ultimately, what we do is we create things like a single line, where you can see the entire infrastructure and click on each icon along the way and figure out, where it's fed from, what's going to be affected by it. If I shut down this transformer, what happens down the line? In plumbing, there might be 3 different ways to divert the water. What's the right way, what's the wrong way? With our QR code system, we're starting to build a big data play. So ultimately, you can start to look at data metrics for your city. We build things like maintenance reminders. What's a maintenance reminder? Maybe I put in LEDs in this auditorium, and those LEDs have a 1-year warranty or a 2-year warranty. Right now, I'm not thinking about that in 2 years. In our system, you put in a maintenance reminder, and you can also put the warranty information in there. So in 1 year and 11 months, you get an email saying, hey dummy, check the warranty. Once again, think of the thousands of things that are being touched on a city on a regular basis. Ultimately, Smart CSM is just another tool in your belt, making you more efficient, making you smarter. So why Smart CSM? Well, first of all, it was built by tradesmen, so we have a key understanding of the complexity and the difficulty of trying to maintain a building like this. Number 2, there's an immediate ROI. You can access the information anytime, anywhere, from any device. Ultimately, we're reducing redundant work, and we're making the environment safer. So Smart CSM today is about energy efficiency, demand response, and it's always about safety and knowledge transfer. With Smart CSM tomorrow we'll be adding other mechanicals, plumbing, HVAC, underground watering systems, fire suppression. You can imagine the myriad of things. So whereas we see a client right now that has an ACV or an annual contract value of maybe $10,000 a year, and he's got a little better deal than that because he's smart, we see an ACV in the future of $30,000 to $35,000. Big ROI. The next step is VIoT, building Internet of Things. Ultimately, using those QR codes to attach it to meters and monitors so you can understand exactly what's going on in your city. Metering and monitoring is the future. So I will use my 2 minutes for any Q&A. I really appreciate everybody's focus and quiet. And I'm ready. Ready for the question. Yes, sir. Oh, sorry, I violated protocol. Not the first time today, in fact.
Where's the mic? You got it? We'll let our judges ask first, because they're doing the score. They're the most important people. Right now.
I honor you.
So I come from a very large campus too,
What campus?
UCLA.
Ah,
We have
go Bruins.
dumb infrastructure. So we have the things that you described earlier. We have very little information about our infrastructure.
How about your plan room, just like that plan room?
So how do you use smart management with dumb infrastructure without use smart infrastructure?
So the first thing we do is we do a massive data upload, which is
What data?
of like all your prints, all your as-built. So we flat scan those and put them all into your system because now they're accessible. Right now they're not accessible to you. I guarantee you, if you're trying to find something, you'll spend hours trying to find something simple because the smartest companies in the world have the same problem. We have a best practices document about how to function within our system. In other words, right now, if I hire an electrician, I send that electrician out into the field, they do the work, I have no idea what they did. I'm determining the success of their work on my ability to get power on my device. In the smart system, that electrician goes in there, they take a picture of the panel before they touch it. They do the work, they take a picture of the panel when they're done. Now you have a database to look at what the panel looked like before they touched it and what the panel looked like after they're done. So your question is very involved and probably not good for, that's the quick 30-second answer, but there's a solution and that's why we're selling so quickly. Judges? That's not a good sign. Young man? That's you.
Well, thank you for your presentation. You gave us so many good information, advantages, and ROI on using Smart Csm. Are there any disadvantages? Are there issues with safety, security that one should be concerned about?
Are there any issues with security? Okay, I want to make sure I answer your question.
Yeah, I'm just
So we're on
asking issues with
AWS.
security.
We're on AWS. I can have a technical conversation with you, no problem. But we work for the most secretive companies in the world. Here's the interesting thing about that data. This is what the head of IT at Raytheon said to us. I appreciate your security, but they can go to the planning office and get the same information ultimately. So they're not really worried about it, but we're very secure. We're about to close our first casino. And let me tell you, the casinos are way more secure than aerospace, which is sort of a scary thing. And by the way, it's a standalone program, so you don't interact with other programs. You can't go through our firewall into another system. Yes?
You haven't mentioned like your management business model, like how is your company going to stay organized and standard testing?
So we're a SaaS program. We charge an annual fee to use the data. We charge a one-time onboarding fee to bring in the data and for limited training. But it's basically an annual contract value. So a client might start out at $5,000 as a test into 2 or 3 buildings, and then put a campus like this might be 40 buildings, and they might be 10, 15,000. Then they start adding other mechanicals, God willing, and they might be 30 or 35,000. We haven't lost a single customer yet. Once you get your data onto our system, it's not really practical to try to jump onto another system.
Greg, if you keep talking and doing the sales pitch, I'm gonna have to charge you.
So will that be cash, check, or charge today?
Okay, thank you. Okay, next we're going to have up City of Cudahy. Judges, please finish up, and we'll read. We can get the judges' sheets. Or you can get the City of Cudahy. Okay, but good luck. We're on 10. Go ahead. Questions? All right, City of Cudahy. Anybody know what City of Cudahy? About that? Smallest, most dense city in Los Angeles? I'm stealing her show. I looked that up because I didn't know where they were. And when I found out that they were there, because the program that you're going to hear about is an awesome, awesome program. And I don't want to add to your thunder here, but everyone would be happy. But thanks for coming. Okay. Judges?
Is this working?
There you go. You guys ready? All set? Got sheets over here? Okay. All right. We got the other score already? Perfect. Okay, we should know where I live. How we're doing with that airball things over here. Okay. All right, why don't you go ahead? We'll grab the sheets and we'll get.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here. My name is Melissa Butler, and I'm representing the City of Cudahy. And I just want to share a little bit with you about their long-range water conservation and parks plan that we're helping them to develop. From here on out, I'll probably become that plan. That's quite a mouthful. Just briefly, I want to share with you an overview of what I want to talk to you today. So first, I want to talk to you about what we're trying to achieve through this plan, and then talk to you about how we identify the opportunities within the City of Cudahy for this plan. Also talk to you about some tools that we developed within the plan to help the city make sure that these projects are successful and the opportunities that we've identified, as well as an implementation plan for long-term success. So goals. I don't know if many of you know, but the Water Conservation and Parks Plan is relatively new. It's funded by Proposition 1 and administered by the Rivers and Mountains Conservancy. So a fundamental goal of this plan is to develop ways to integrate water conservation and parks planning together. So gone are the days of laying down turf in a park and calling it done. We really have to be able to demonstrate multiple benefits from projects in our built environment. Another goal of this plan is to conform with other plans. So the city of Cudahy has recently updated their general plan so that locally we wanted to be in conformance with their plan, as well as we've looked at and been in communication with the Lower LA River Revitalization Plan group, regional, and looking at all the communities in the Lower LA River region. That's the mandate by Senate Bill 530 to bring the communities together and make sure that they're represented in the larger LA River Master Plan. Also, we want to ensure long-term success of the projects themselves, so considering maintenance and maintenance costs, et cetera, as well as the plan itself. And of course, position Cudahy to future funding opportunities. This is a map of the city of Cudahy. You'll see. It is just west of the LA River, and it has familiar neighbors: Bell at the north, Huntington Park to the west, and Southgate to the south. It does, as he mentioned, it does weigh in at just over a square mile in size, but the community is made up of over 25,000 residents. So it's a tiny but mighty city, as you could say. It has a lot of services that it needs to provide for a lot of people. The other factor in this is that the median income of the residents of Cudahy is certainly lower than that of the average in the county. So they're trying to do a lot with little. So keeping in mind that we're trying to marry this this concept of water conservation with parks planning, and we're taking into account the general plan as well as larger regional plans. We certainly, our method for developing these opportunities was to consider the recommendations from the general plan, which certainly had parks element. So it includes the 5 existing systems: Cudahy Park. There's a small River Road Park in the upper east corner, and then the 2 in the center, Clara Street Park, as well as Clara Extension. And then on the west side, there's Lugo Park. Certainly, the other factor here is that the city certainly doesn't meet the mandate of the county either. Thank you. For open space for residents. So we're looking at the park space, we're also looking at the storm drainage overlay, and certainly we want to help add amenities in the parks, but we've also as well as suggesting the general plan, these cul-de-sac pocket park areas. But also in this plan, we've introduced also this green loop that's in the center, so where we can introduce stormwater amenities along with park-like amenities such as shade, seating, crosswalks, etc. So for all of the primary focus areas, there are these fact sheets. Fact sheets that can be taken directly from the plan and the city can use to apply for grants for funding for these various projects. Each fact sheet contains a list of needs and then proposed solutions for them, a cost estimate for what these solutions would cost, both related to stormwater management as well as park improvement. There's also a metric, so we can measure this square footage of reduced turf, square footage increased in permeable paving, these types of things, so that the benefits are measurable and trackable. In this case, this typology, there's really kind of 2 typologies. This park fact sheet, for example, this is Cudahy Park, of course. And we also include key design considerations. So especially in Cudahy Park, we want to make that connection with the LA River. So we really emphasize that in future design contracts, that's something that should be included. The other typology is the right-of-way, much more like the green loop that I pointed out, because the advantage of right-of-way is it's already under city jurisdiction and ready for development. In this case, this is that river road just adjacent to Cudahy Park that could be, basically the hardscape could be made softer. We can make visible in right-of-ways stormwater treatment features such as, infiltration basins and that sort of thing. Oftentimes stormwater treatment is out of view of the public. They don't know what's happening. And so we can bring that into their consciousness. Also bring the consciousness of the river and how near it is. In the areas where we can close off the roads to vehicular traffic, we can invite the public to the edge of the river. And as you can see in the upper right-hand corner, soften that hardscape both, soften it both with green planters, so literally as well as visually. And last but not least, the part that we're really excited about is adding an implementation chapter. We know that in a long-term plan to encourage the long-term success of the plan, there will certainly be challenges but also opportunities along the way. So we really want this plan to be adapted. So we've laid out certainly workshops and things that can help facilitate the city to track the progress, make sure that it stays transparent. And we know that most staff, we recommend that on an annual basis. Most staff, and of course Cudahy is challenged in staff as well as related to the funding issue. So we know they don't enjoy writing staff reports either, so we have a series of worksheets that helps guide them through that process. So really the idea behind the strategic implementation plan is to make sure that the projects come to fruition, that they are monitored for, that the designs that are proposed do follow this plan's recommendations, and in general for the long-term success of this plan and for the city of Cudahy. Thank you very much. I'll open it up to questions. Yes, ma'am.
Have you shared this with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers who are responsible for
You got a microphone coming in. Could you ask the question again?
Yeah, have you shared this with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who is going to be responsible for managing the stretch of the LA River?
At this time, we have not, but we will definitely take that into recommendation.
Yeah, you should do that as soon as possible.
Hi, are all of these projects dependent on outside funding, or will any of these be implemented in the short term?
We do have more myopic ideas for plans that can be implemented in the short term without having outside funding. I wouldn't even really get into that at this time, but things like tactical urbanism, where you can add, low-cost amenities and that has a visible, and that is a certain stage and recommendation of this plan as well. But ultimately, for larger projects, yeah, outside funding is probably going to be critical.
So as we saw today, there's a lot of outside funding for disadvantaged communities for the startup of projects like this, the planning of projects, grant applications, and grant money for capital expenses.
Sure.
Have you been able to document any savings that the cities will have that will enable them to create a funding stream for operations and maintenance of these facilities over time? Is that the part of the plan?
Certainly the part of the metrics portion where you can measure the actual benefits of the projects as they're executed. So the part of what we propose is introducing more efficient irrigation, filtration of water. So in that sense, you can measure it and you can put a dollar amount on that. But certainly the maintenance issue is always an issue after implementing a capital project. So the idea there is that we have someone in the city steward and really make sure that any of the design contracts that come in also include a maintenance plan for the facilities that are implemented. So that is a recommendation this time as well.
Okay, very nice. Thank you. So we're going to have City Carson coming up, judges if you want to score. As you notice, it's a little hard because it's not like Shark Tank, right, where everybody's pitching to get some money or something like that. And we've got some entrepreneurs that are for-profit, and so they're pushing hard to get their products out. Then we've got agencies that and cities that are trying to solve real key problems in the city. So we're going to have City Carson, Ken Parkson, and then we'll wrap up with state governments. And we'll have our awards. So thanks, guys. And you ready? Okay.
Thank you. Introductory comments from Councilmember Hilton today. I think he made some very powerful quotations from Dr. Martin Luther King. And, you know, I think Dr. King recognized above all that disadvantaged communities have the cards stacked against them. They've got to work really hard to make improvements in their communities. Very difficult. And so what I want to basically do is put that in context of the city of Carson and talk about our comprehensive energy efficiency program. Make sure I do this correctly. There we go. So basically, I mean, take a look at Carson, and when you're here, you recognize that our quality of life is really impacted by two major refineries here, Toro and Phillips 66, and we have a heavy industrial base. Air quality is a major issue in our community. The city itself has struggled financially the last the last 11 years. We've had 8 deficit budgets. I have an $80 million city budget, and I have an $8 million deficit. So it makes it difficult. It's a struggle. And we've reduced our staff by 26% the last 8 years. So just maintaining city services and making capital improvements with inadequate funding is a very challenging task. But the council basically set a priority to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and really look at alternative energy projects even with these deficit budgets. So they've challenged me to be an entrepreneur. How's that, Mike? There you go. There you go. City managers can be entrepreneurs. So the first thing we did is conduct what we call an investment grade audit of our facilities. We surveyed every city facility that we had. And we work with our staff to identify energy saving opportunities and potential sites for solar. We started to look at basically low-cost resources, kind of the low-hanging fruit through energy audits. And we actually went out and spent a little money. We spent about $25,000 for consultant services. But we've also had a lot of lifting with the South Bay Council of Governments to help us do lighting audits. And then also the California Energy Commission has helped us do some third-party reviews for project savings. They've been very helpful, their staff. And then we started to develop a multi-energy efficiency project list. Again, projects that we need to do. So really it's a roadmap, much like Cudahy's talking about a roadmap to apply for grants. That's probably one of the first things I'd advise the disadvantaged community to do is invest a little bit in the very beginning to get a roadmap for where you want to go. And I think it fits into what Dr. King was recommending. So one of the first things we did was install roof-mounted solar panels on our community center. We just recently completed a change-out of 1,100 of our high-pressure sodium streetlights to LEDs. We just completed that in December. We've been able to retrofit some of our pools. For a disadvantaged community, we've been very active and provide a lot of opportunities for our residents. We have actually 3 city pools within a major pool complex, but it's very expensive to maintain pools. And we've been doing LED lighting upgrades at our parks when we have the ability with our in-house staff. And then also, as we talked about a little bit earlier, CAL FIRE, we actually applied for a grant to replace, we had over 900 street trees missing in the community and over 500 trees in parks were missing. Where a tree goes missing, I don't know, but they weren't there when I looked for them. So we applied for a grant. We applied for a grant to replace them. And we've also developed an internal, what we call an internal revolving fund. So when we get savings from these energy projects, we plow them back into additional energy projects to create more savings. And we're currently working through the California Energy Commission with a company called Charge Bliss to create and develop what we call our net zero advanced energy system in Carson. We'll talk a little bit about it. So the first part was a $1.5 million CEC grant to develop shovel-ready project plans. So that's where you actually have plans ready to go into plan check at the grant stage. And there's another potential grant coming up of $14 million in what's called a phase 2 of the CEC grant. So what it does is basically provides solar collectors and carports, obviously, planned for the Civic Center and all selected parks with solar, and also EV charging stations. And we're trying to add as many as we can. In this case, we're going to put in 40 EV charging chargers throughout city properties, parks, and the Civic Center. If we can add more, we will. And then also we have really old central plant air conditioning equipment, and it's over 30 years old, our air conditioning equipment. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of energy savings just in terms of changing out some of our older systems, and then also going to LED lighting within all city facilities. So this is just kind of a diagram. If you look at it, you can see that's our community center. In the center is white. You can see we're starting the diagram now where all the carports would be for this. You can see where they would go as part of the city facilities. So lessons learned. Engage your city council in setting alternative energy goals. Discuss your needs with staff, the utilities, elected officials, and state agencies. Develop a multi-year project list and programs. Be creative and flexible, and remember that success takes time. So that's our Carson project.
All right, thanks, Ken. Any questions from the judges?
So Ken, has the city looked at any of the technology that would allow you, when you install the EV station, to actually take some of the energy out of cars when they're finished charging, to actually have them charge? Any of the systems don't charge out. There's a lot of new technology that the city has had on.
I don't know that specific detail. I know the battery systems for the solar have that capability, but I'm not sure about the chargers themselves.
Any questions from the audience? Okay, nice job, Ken. Thank you. All right, judges, if you wrap up, last but not least is Cal State Dominguez. We just hired a new sustainability officer, and she's going to be presenting along with our plant manager and talking about some unique things that we've done here. So we got to get set up. Mr. Mike. Okay.
Okay, you can all hear me. Hello. So as Mike was mentioning, my name is Ellie Perry. I'm the new sustainability coordinator for Cal State Dominguez Hills. Today we also have Kenny Seaton, our campus energy manager, who will be taking over halfway through the presentation since this is his baby, so he's going to get more into the technical aspects. So we're here today to talk about a particular project, our latest and greatest, which is our 1 megawatt battery storage project that we just installed on campus. So you're not jumping up and down in your seats, and the reason is probably because it's a very complicated problem that we're trying to address that most people aren't necessarily familiar with. So I'm going to go ahead and break it down. So for those of you who have never heard of the term peak demand, this is the problem that the energy company generally has in terms of addressing demand across regions. So if you think about it, when you go home and you turn on your lights, and flip the switch, you expect the electricity company to basically provide enough power to power your devices and keep it going. And you generally don't ask any questions after that, right? So the problem that the utility faces is like, okay, of course, we're going to deliver enough energy for you to power your home, but what happens when your next door neighbor also turns on their lights at exactly the same time? What about the hospital next door? What about the commercial building that's also down the street? And all of this tends to compile until you have this regional demand problem where the utility is being expected to provide all of this energy at exactly the same time because that is the time when everyone is demanding that resource. A really good analogy in terms of thinking about this is the freeway. So for those of you who have ever driven in traffic in LA, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? So if you think of power generation as the capacity of the freeway, you know, you have X number of lanes to basically get people from one end of LA to another. However, if you ask, like, how long will it take me to get there, the question is timing, right? So what time are you going? So if you're trying to drive down the 405 in the middle of rush hour, like in afternoon traffic, morning commutes, it's going to take you a lot longer because capacity is limited. Everybody is trying to drive at exactly the same time. So if you think about that in terms of power generation, it's a huge problem. Everyone's demanding that resource at exactly the same time. So in terms of the way you think about it, I mean, if you drive on the freeway at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're not going to run into the same issues as if you're trying to drive at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on a weekday. So this is kind of the challenge that utility companies have in terms of addressing demand, and this is where our project comes in terms of our issue. So if you're the utility company, you basically have two options to help address peak demand issues. So you can either increase the supply, the amount of energy you provide, or you can try to decrease demand. For all intents and purposes, it's really two sides of the same coin, so there's multiple strategies that you can implement to try to address this problem. So for one, you might have heard of the term demand response. So that's generally just a strategy to try to incentivize customers to reduce demand at those peak period times. So you could do that in a variety of ways. You could pay them off, tell them not to turn on stuff during that time. You could do formal programs to kind of come up with a comprehensive strategy to try to reduce demand at that time. There's also time of use, so like you get billed more if you use your energy at a particular time of day. So lots of different strategies you can do as a utility company. You can also temporarily increase the supply at that particular moment by buying additional peak power from something called a virtual power plant. So it's almost the concept of buying megawatts or just energy efficiency by basically working with some sort of aggregator to say, hey, can you guarantee that if I call on you, you're going to be able to reduce demand by X amount of megawatt hours? And they basically say, yes, we can do that, so it essentially functions as a peaker plant. You can also do similar strategy with conventional methods by, hey, I'm going to turn on these really dirty natural gas plants that only come on during peak demand periods, so similar effect. You could also build more power plants in general, so for example, for the analogy portion of it, it's just like building more lanes on the freeway. However, as you know, it's expensive and potentially wasteful, so we would never try to build 5 extra lanes on the I-10 just to address morning commutes, right? Because it would be really expensive, it would be wasteful, take up a lot of space. So same exact reason why we just don't build crazy amounts of power plants just to address that peak demand period. Again, you could raise rates during peak times, so time of use, if you ever see that on your utility bill, is basically just saying, hey, because you use this amount of energy at a particular time, we're charging you more, so stop doing that. And also you can reduce load, so you can get people to basically raise temperatures, so instead of trying to blast the AC, we agree to not turn up the temperature or turn down the temperature as much. You can turn off motors, you can shift loads to later, so again, part of that demand response strategy to try to manage when people are demanding energy. So STEM is the aggregator that we're working with the battery storage project, so we'll bring them up again. But their strategy is to basically build a virtual power plant across the region, and they have additional batteries in the West LA Basin. And Cal State Dominguez Hills is a major distributed energy resource in that portfolio when they work with the utilities to basically guarantee a certain amount of reduction. So why battery storage? So now that we understand the problem, like why is battery storage such a big deal? So electricity, so here on campus as an example, so electricity cost for most commercial customers is entirely determined by the max amount of capacity that they use at a particular 15-minute period. So usually you think like, oh, well, if I turn, like, the energy bill should just be how much I use throughout the month, right? It doesn't matter what time it is. However, for commercial customers, we're affected by how much did you use at the most in a 15-minute period during that month. And then not just how much energy you used over the course of the month. So that's kind of two different ways of looking at it. So being able to control your energy demand during peak periods has a massive impact on the cost. So for a live example, this is just our typical September Cal State Dominguez Hills energy bill. So however, if you take a closer look, you would think like, okay, well, it's just based on how much energy you use, right? But actually, about 60% of our cost is entirely determined by how much we use in that peak 15-minute demand period. So if you look at it, it's kilowatts, not kilowatt hours. So that's the capacity, not how much we actually use, right? So that's that 15-minute period. And then you can see that it's $59,000 out of our $101,000 monthly utility bill for the whole campus. So it has a huge impact in terms of if we can bring that number down in that 15-minute period, that could have a huge impact on our cost savings of the campus. So, and then turn it back to storage.
All right, so you can see how expensive it is. So how do we fix it? So we teamed up with STEM, we went with batteries. That's the first picture of the batteries being unveiled off the truck. They showed up in October. They went online December 14th. So we've had, so far this whole month, building period to see how it's going to do. Behind the meter, we are the largest battery storage system in Southern California right now for one site. Why that's such a big deal is I was just reading an article, some country, they're putting in 750 kW battery storage distributed throughout the place, which means they have to decide you can shut off 5 here, 10 here, whatever. If there's a problem with the grid and there's not enough power for everybody, this campus can shed 1 megawatt of power, which is more than anybody else ever uses, all at once. The problem with the battery storage is they don't want you putting power back into the grid. We don't want to buy it and then give it back. It's not economical. So we buy it and then we use it ourselves instead of using it from the grid. This slide here shows a nice picture of peak demand periods. They have their Athena battery controls. It's all super smart AI. But this is how much electricity we're using. This is our peak demand now, the green line. All these spots here is when the battery kicked in. So the campus would have used this much power, would have set the peak at a higher level. Would have used this much power, would have set the peak at 22.2 megawatts instead of 1.8 megawatts. So just by saving 300 to 400 kW on the system, we're going to save $7,000 to $8,000 every month, hopefully. So then, and it's looking like it's going to do that absolutely. So the difference in what the battery does and what we actually buy from Edison is how much money we save. This line here shows that the software is really smart and it's predicting what our load is so that as the months go on, it can get smarter and smarter and we can reduce that peak even more. Next slide. So what did it cost? They don't want me to say. And here's why. So I'm unique. So entrepreneurial, right? You have to be first. You want to pilot stuff. You want to do stuff. They want to prove technology. I have the real estate. I have the initiative. Let's do it, right? So for us, it didn't actually cost us hardly anything. They're being paid by Edison, by the utility companies. We're in a disadvantaged community, so there are lots of funding opportunities. There was a program going on if it's still going on, LCR, local capacity reserves. Instead of them building more plants, they'll spend the money on reducing and demand stuff. And they're doing that all over the place. If we had bought the system, we would have had a shared savings, and it would have cost us $20,000 or $30,000 to put it in, and we would have shared 50, 50, 45, 55, something like that with them for the demand savings. So we were ready to sign on the dotted line for that program, and it just got better. So we save on our peak demand utility charges. You know, we're looking at hopefully, I think it's going to be better than that. That was a nice number, and it's showing real good. We've also pledged to further reduce during demand response events. There are demand response events that companies can sign up for. So Edison, utility companies call an event, and you say, okay, I'm going to shed 300 kW, and then they pay you for that. So last year we did about $20,000 in demand response events of savings. We'll still be able to do that because the battery has nothing to do with that. The software says, hey, battery saved this much, and you guys saved this much more. So we're doing our part every year.
Fine.
That's it.
No,
that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. If you want to have a kid, I've got a couple of quick questions at all. I don't know. Judges, you guys got anything?
So it's way beyond my expertise. So I think I understand that what they're doing is buying energy from Edison and then storing it as well. And also maybe generating some on campus.
No, we're buying energy from Edison. You're right. It's not done with solar or anything. We're buying it when it's cheap, not time, so the time use is less. And then we're discharging it back, but not to Edison, only for our own use during really high peak demand time. So the power would cost more in the afternoon, and we're able to shed that in the afternoon.
So you actually shed the new, basically you comply with Edison's request to lower electricity because you already had that electricity stored.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
How many years will you get your return on investment?
Well, for us, because we didn't pay anything, I just made $5,000 already and it's been online for 2 weeks. So if I was paying for it, again, the payback would be probably, if it cost me $20,000 up front, I save $5,000 a month, then pretty quick. Yes.
And rather than having put in a solar system, why was this chosen? Or is there already a strong?
Yeah, 2 reasons. We don't have the location just yet for solar because of all the planning and stuff. Footprint is much smaller for this. The other reason is solar is really good. Solar produces electricity, but there's a bigger picture. So if you think of all of Carson that has all the solar and they're producing electricity and a cloud comes overhead, right? Now there's not that electricity. And so the grid has to come up with all that power. And it's not there. So they got to fire a coal plant, so they got to buy it from somewhere else, so they got to get diesels running. And with more of systems like this, they don't have to do that because now they can say, oh, look, the clouds just came overhead and everybody needs more power because we're not producing it on the solar panels. So our batteries can discharge back into the system and we don't need to take that power from them. So it's as the future, it's going to get real complicated on how we balance out that load. Because if everybody puts solar on, where is it going to go, right? And so the clouds come in, they cover it up. Now where is it? There's no power. And so you're going to need batteries as we move forward.
You guys good, judges? Okay, if you can finish up your sheet, we'll get rolling on that. And, all right, you got that question back here real quick? Okay, well, the judges are finished. You guys done? Okay, now we get the sheets, and then we'll, what we're going to do is tally up, put all the scores, and we'll bring that up, turn it around, and that's who our winners will be. I'm going to say everybody that presented today is a winner. All right, once you, okay. Yeah. So you